to overcome evil and injustice and ignorance. And some days, those tools just don't seem up to the task. I've been grappling lately with a question. If you play by the rules, if you abide by the thoughts of fairness and truth and consistency, and you're up against an opponent who cheats and lies and just wantonly behaves with not a lot of regard for being consistent, is there any way to win? I have to admit that I felt disillusioned, at times even bereft, contemplating the seeming rejection of science, of racial equalities, of values that I hold dear by large portions of society. It's easy to lose perspective when you're in the midst of dark times. We overestimate some threats and underestimate others. We believe our plight is worse than it really is, because our predictions about the future, no matter how founded in logic and experience, are never wholly accurate. We never really know the whole story. We only know a version of the story, and no ending is ever final. My 13-year-old daughter was talking with a friend of hers recently who said, "It's so unfair. Hundreds of years ago, girls our age were out playing in the meadows, not worrying about pandemics and the future of their country." And in good UU fashion, my daughter responded, "Yes, and hundreds of years ago, girls our age were married against their will to middle-aged men." Human progress toward justice is not linear. There are fits and starts, there are losses, but we have progressed. It's helpful when things seem dark to see the lights of those who share our values and our struggles. Like the oil lamps of Diwali, like the luminaries we placed at our VUU campus earlier this month. May we be beacons of hope to each other and to the community, reminding one another that we are not alone and illuminating a path to something better. And in that spirit, let's sing our hymn together, "We Would Be One."
We would be one, as now we join in singing our hymn of love, to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other, to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow a nobler world than we have known today. We
We are entering the season of gift giving. Why do we do this? Because a gift says, you matter to me. Each week we invite you to contribute to the Valley UU congregation. If you do, I hope they are true gifts that say, this place matters to me. Of course, it's bad manners to request a gift. So let me say only that you matter to VUU, every one of you. I hope the feeling is mutual. It has been my practice for some years always to include words of those from communities of color. This week I offer this prayer from Charles Eric Lincoln, scholar of religion who served as professor at both Fisk University and Duke, and author of many books. I've shortened it because, well, even the word prayer for us is a little hard to swallow. But if you listen, you'll find your heart is in his words. And rather than look at my face, I thought you'd enjoy watching the bees pollinate the flowers outside the sanctuary, praying with their bodies and making the world better one flower at a time. Here are the words of Charles Eric Lincoln. Lord, let me love. Let loving be the symbol of grace that warms my heart, and let me find thy loving hand to still me when I tremble at thy command to love all humankind. Lord, I have no wish to wield the sword of power. I want none to leap at my command, nor let my critics feel constrained to cower for fear of some reprisal at my hand. Lord, let me love the lowly and the humble, forgetting not the mighty and the strong, and give me grace to love those who may stumble, nor let me seek to judge of right or wrong. Lord, let my parish be the world unbounded. Let love of race and clan be at an end. Let every hateful doctrine be confounded that interdicts the love of friend for friend. Such plain and simple words. Perhaps someday we will heed them. And so let us pray, meditate, pause, keep silent, and listen.
I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty in the world through my own eyes. Yes, I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty in the world through my own eyes. You used to rock me in the cradle of your arms. You said you'd hold me till the pains of life were gone. You said you'd comfort me in times like these, and now I need you, and now I need you, and you are gone. So I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty in the world through my own eyes. Since you've gone and left me, there's been so little beauty, but I know I saw clearly through your eyes. Now the world outside is such a cold and bitter place. Here inside I have few things that will console. And when I try to hear your voice above the storms of life, then I remember that I was told. Yes, I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me me to see the beauty in the world through my own eyes. Yes, I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty in the world through my own eyes. I think all the things that made me feel so wonderful when I was young. I think all the things that made me laugh, made me dance, made me sing. I think all the things that made me grow into a being full of pride. I think on these things, for they are true. And I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty in the world through my own eyes. I thought that you were gone, but now I know you're with me. You are the voice that whispers all I need to hear. I know a please, a thank you, and a smile will take me far. I know that I am you and you are me and we are one. I know that who I am is numbered in each grain of sand. I know that I've been blessed again and over again. Yes, I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty in the world through my own eyes. Yes, I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty in the world through my own eyes.
Well, it's always great to see the folks in my former congregation do so much good work. We are truly a community that goes well beyond the moment and the place. I'm so grateful that we can share from their wealth, and I'm sure we're sharing our wealth with others as well. So I'm back inside, which is great, but it means my sunglasses are still changing. So I want to start a story. Long ago, in a galaxy far away called the 1960s, Thanksgiving time meant you could watch The Wizard of Oz. In that bygone era, the movie came on but once a year, a mark of the holiday season. In fact, an event that gathered the family around the grainy screen in the living room. For a few years, it was all in black and white, at least at our house, because we didn't have a color TV. But because it was an event, it was memorable. We even had a long playing record on our turntable that had the dialogue and the songs, and more than once it lulled me to sleep as a young person. The movie, of course, has eclipsed the book from which it came, but I knew the book as well. In fact, books, there were several, because my father used to read them to us as children. That memory alone makes the story even more powerful for me. And years later in high school, when we were asked to write a paper on a favorite book, that's the one I chose. Of course, by then I was older, and we had already read The Return of the Native by Thomas Hardy and The Stranger by Albert Camus, and were feeling very deep and grim. Thus, my paper was no panegyric of praise, but rather based on an article in the then new magazine Psychology Today, in which the author suggested that the wizard functioned like a therapist, helping the characters find their way through their problems. I guess that kind of works. You can imagine my delight when years later, I read how L. Frank Baum summered in Holland, Michigan, which is just down the road from where we live in Grand Rapids. He is said to have written most of that book there, drawing on his own life. Apparently the Yellow Brick Road really did exist at the boarding school where he was a young man. And that he said that the name Oz he found from a file drawer in his office labeled O to Z. When I was in Los Angeles a few years back, I went up to Glendale, where there's a famous cemetery full of famous people, and One of the people I paused to visit was L. Frank Baum. Just a simple little stone there. And it's not far from the grave of Amy Semple McPherson. And some of you may not remember her. I don't remember her either, but I know about her. She was a great celebrity evangelist of her era. And I thought, well, in some ways, the two of them were working the same side of the street. They were both promoters of legends, as it were. And his book went around the globe in circulations, probably as much as the Bible in many respects. Of course, the Wizard of Oz aroused a great deal of anxiety among devout Christians because it talked about witchcraft and good witches, and that girls could be in charge of things. That was very troubling for a lot of folks, at least in the devout Christian community. On the other side, there were good conservative political people who saw in L. Frank Baum's book a cryptic way to sneak in a critique of capitalism. I guess both were wrong, but that, you see, that's what a great story does. It allows many interpretations. Consciously or not, Baum's story has elements of the mythological in it, and that allows for multiple meanings. Remember that Sigmund Freud named his most impressive insight for the legend of Oedipus, a mythological story. So this morning, I want to offer an insight I've gained from the story. It's not the only one, but it's the one that I think is pertinent for today. To give you some context for this, let me talk about a fellow named Northrop Frye, a Canadian scholar who came up with a theory called archetypal criticism, in which he said all stories can be reduced to essentially four types. There's the tragedy, the comedy, the romance, and the satire. These archetypes have common shapes and outcomes. And in this context, Oz is a romance, which is generally found as a journey that ends in success. And doesn't that describe the story? Homer's Odyssey is another romance, for example. Don Quixote is a bit of a romance, though it turns into a satire. Looked at through this lens, you can even see the Jesus story as a romance, a story that ends in triumph. So is the one about Muhammad. America, our story, is something of a romance, a quest, a story that we tell ourselves about ourselves, telling us who we are. Of course, that's only true if you're white, straight, and generally Christian. If you're native or black or gay or poor or Jewish or Muslim, that story doesn't ring quite as true. In that case, it really might be a bitter satire. You see, we are storytelling creatures. We need to find meaning in the things that happen to us. And we shape these events into forms that help explain why they happened and what they mean. There's a book I read years ago, really wonderful book called On the Origin of Stories, in which the author suggests that we are evolutionarily, inevitably storytellers, because that's how we create meaning out of the randomness of life. So now, with that little background, I want to turn back to that high school paper just a little bit, because I was correct to notice that the characters changed over time through adversity. That was what got my interest in the first place. Now, the psychological interpretation is one available one, but I think there's something deeper, because they not only changed, but how they changed is what's important. They all faced adversities that had the effect of challenging their weaknesses, but also revealing that their weakness was also not a weakness. The Scarecrow, for example, who felt brainless, is the one who schemes to get Dorothy saved. The heartless Tin Man is afraid for Dorothy and begins to cry, which of course means he rusts, and that's a problem. And of course, the gutless, cowardly Lion leaps to Dorothy's defense. Now, psychologists would say that they overcame their problems, their neuroses or something like that. But I think it goes deeper. The Oz story tells us that what we think we are to ourselves is less than what we actually are. We only have a partial sense of our completeness. Scarecrow is stupid, but also smart. And the smart didn't erase the stupid. They're just part of the person that the Scarecrow is. The Tin Man is both hard and soft. The Lion is both scared and brave. Does that sound like people we know? Of course. And Dorothy is both weak and strong. And the story says that they found their larger selves in serving each other. There is a scene in another movie I love, Moonstruck, in which Loretta Castorini, played by Cher, has to tell her fiance that she will not marry him. He wants to talk in private, but she says, I need my family around me. They gave her strength and identity. And I think that's what happened to the characters in Oz. They found that in caring for each other, they had more strength than they knew. So let me make this personal to you now. Was there a time when you felt weak or uncertain, but found courage? Chances are it was not for yourself, but for something more than yourself. In my case, I can think of an instance long ago on the school playground when some kids were taunting my younger brother. Now, he was no weakling. In fact, he was a bit bigger than I was, but there were more of them. And these same kids who had taunted me before and I cowered before them suddenly became characters I could face. I roared into them. I didn't beat them up as much as threatened to harm them, and they scattered. Why did I find courage right then? I didn't expect to. But he was my brother. How could I not? We find our best selves not in serving our own personal ambitions for fame or fortune, but in serving something larger than ourselves, something precious to us. Family is an obvious case. I think we all have a story like that, but it can be friends, country, congregation. Have you protested something in the past? I'll bet you have. Did you do it alone? No. It was easier when you both had a cause and you had company to go along. Have you found yourselves giving a little more money or a little more time than you intended when someone else said, come on, let's do this together? And so you did. You pitched in the extra buck, gave the extra hour because someone else you cared about was involved. Now, that would be enough for a decent sermon right there. Pitch in for everybody. Get past your weaknesses. We can do this, and that's fine. But as I noted earlier, legends and myths have many meanings. Toward the end of the movie of The Wizard of Oz, I noticed something for the first time recently. Having recognized the Scarecrow and the Tin Man and the Lion for their missing parts, the wizard is now helping Dorothy to take her back to Kansas in his balloon. And then a scene comes when this happens. Blake, could you put that up for us? To
confer, converse, and otherwise hobnob with my brother wizards. And I hereby decree that until what time, if any, that I return, the Scarecrow, by virtue of his highly superior brains, shall rule in my stead, assisted by the Tin Man, by virtue of his magnificent heart, and the Lion, by virtue of his courage.
So you all know that story. You all probably know that scene. And the fun part is that you know he's pulling a fast one. He's not really a wizard. But this is what I noticed. What he did was he bestowed authority from himself to someone else. And I realized, given what we're seeing after the election, that this is what real leaders do. They pass authority on. No one is a leader forever. At some point, it has to go to someone else. And the smooth passage from one leader to another is one of the greatest responsibilities of leadership. Now, I could now expound on our current president and his reluctance to do this, but you can read the pundits on your own. My point is that this question is also pertinent to congregational life. I am your spiritual leader, qualified by training and experience to take the role, but I'm not the only leader in this room. You have an educational leader in Marcy. You have her associate, Haley. We have a musical leader in Katie. We have a management leader in Laura. And those are just the ones that you've appointed because of their skill. There are so many other leaders here. The board exercises leadership, committees, leadership by appointment. There are longtime members who have great respect and exercise moral leadership that we need to understand and respect. Leadership apparently goes on all through an institution. It takes many forms, and all of them are temporary. No one, least of all me, is entitled to leadership. And wise leaders know this and remember it, that they are not in leadership because they deserve it, but because the people have asked them to do it. We live in an era that lionizes leadership. Leadership has 100 books on hand. You can go into any bookstore and there's whole shelves of leadership books. There are actual professorships in leadership studies. Eventually there will be degrees given in leadership studies. But in a democracy, like this congregation, like this nation, it is the followers who create the leader. Followership is in some ways far more important than leadership. Well, what do I mean by followership? It doesn't mean doing what the leader says. This is not a scene from Peter Pan where we sing following the leader wherever he may go. It doesn't mean believing what the leader says because they're right and we have a duty to believe them. Followership is not following the leader. Followership is what the characters in the story did. Not following the wizard, but following the path they set out to travel. They stuck together. They relied on each other to get the job done. Followers follow the mission. So what do leaders do? They help the people do the work. They don't do it. They help the people do the work. And anyone can help that out. There is no special person who is a leader by virtue of birth or training or wisdom or experience. It's not the alpha male, which does not exist. It is not the expert who has all the degrees, who has taken courses, who is a consultant and a TED talker. Whoever can help the community, the congregation, or the nation move toward its goal is a leader. And it can happen at any place in the institution, at the front of the line, at the end, in the middle. That's what I think I'm learning from the Wizard of Oz. The wizard had no powers. They just told him he did. And when he left, he gave those assigned powers to someone else. And chances are they did a pretty good job. Even the weak and the flawed can be strong and capable when they have the support of those around them. Yeah, we can elect leaders, but they can be selected, appointed, apparent, eager or reluctant. In a place like ours, everyone will be a leader in some way at some point in time. Which brings me to my final observation this morning. The most leaderly thing a leader can do is recognize leadership in others. An old story from our Unitarian Universalist history is a great example. Hosea Ballou, the most popular preacher in Universalism in the late 18th and early 19th century, began his career in a tiny town in Massachusetts, Dana, Massachusetts. And he had a student, which in those days is how you became a preacher. You didn't go to seminary. you went and learned like an apprentice at another church. And the young man was very reluctant to preach, especially with such an estimable preacher as his teacher. Sensing the problem, Hosea Ballou summoned the young man one Sunday morning early and said, "I have a splitting headache. I simply cannot preach today. You must go on instead." Of course, the young man said, no, I can't possibly. He said, no, I'm too sick. You must do it in my stead. Naturally terrified, he tried to beg off. But the elder pastor was his teacher and would not accept any excuses. So he staggered into the pulpit quivering and began a career that lasted for the rest of his life. Ballou was a true wizard in this respect because he saw in the young man what the young man could not see in himself. Like Baum's wizard, he placed a challenge before him, but not one he could not overcome. And in meeting the challenge, the younger man found that he had strength and capacity and courage. And the people around him saw it too. That's the true power of leadership, I think, to see the leadership we all have within us. In the fabled book of Numbers, which is in the Bible, there's a story about how Joshua runs in to tell Moses that two men are out there prophesying in the courtyard. I should stop them, shouldn't I? And Moses says, "Are you jealous for my sake? You think I'm the only one who's allowed to prophesy? Oh, I wish all of God's people were prophets." Maybe they are. Maybe we all have our prophetic moment to offer. Any leader who won't let you lead is not a leader. And any follower who selects a leader that will not nourish leaders is no leader. I pray and I ask, I wish whatever word works for you, that in my brief time with you, that I have the opportunity to bless you into the leadership and prophethood that's within all of you. Whether by skill or character or experience, you all have that within you. And may your future spiritual leader be one who rejoices in this as Moses did, as Hosea Ballou did, and lead you not by telling you where to go and what to do, but by asking you to bring your best self to the work. A leader who leads by humble example, so that you may go from strength to strength in the years to come. That is my hope and that is my prayer. And as ever, it is an honor to serve you on this Sunday and for the next 2 years. Thank you so much. And now I invite Melanie to introduce our closing hymn.
Our closing hymn is a favorite. It was recorded by our music director, Katie, before her maternity leave. We are building a new way.
We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. We are walking to be free. Hate and greed and jealousy. We are working to be free.
Hiya, sweetie, period.
We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. Start with love, that is the seed. We can feed is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Without these, this world would die. Peace and freedom is our cry.
Before we extinguish the chalice, I want to remind you that if you wish to participate in our breakout session, stay on until the prompt to join a breakout room. And if you're new and would rather meet with our minister, stay put in the main session, and that will get you into that room. And now let us join together in the words by which we extinguish our chalice. Though we extinguish the chalice, our connection to each other and this community remains. May its light guide us this week as we walk the path of justice, speak words of love, and fill our world with compassion until we meet again.
And now these words by Theodore Parker, one of the great minds of our past. He said, "Be ours a religion which, like sunshine, goes everywhere. Its temple is all space, its shrine the good heart, its creed all truth, its ritual works of love, its profession of faith, divine living." So let us lead not only ourselves, but others into a world that we have been dreaming for all our lives. See you next week. Bye-bye.